The crowd roared like thunder, and under those Friday night lights, Owen Hanson moved like he was born to own the field. People called him O-Dog back then, a name that stuck like sweat in your jersey. Quarterback, star, the kind of kid you looked at and thought, he's going somewhere. He did go somewhere, just not where they thought. Back then, it was simple. Play hard, win harder. Owen lived off applause, off the kind of high that didn't come in grams or pill, yet. But even in high school, there were whispers. He was too calm, too smooth. Didn't talk much unless he needed to. The kind of kid who could break your nose in a tackle and still help you up with a smile. USC came next. Then the NFL, short-lived, sure, but enough to get his foot in the real world's door. You know, the one behind the fancy cars, fake smiles, and silent deals. Football didn't last. His body held, but the game didn't. One injury, one lost spot, one quiet phone call that never came back. That's how fast it ends. One moment you're signing autographs. Next, you're just another ex-athlete chasing shadows. That's when the real game started. It began slow, like all poison does. A connection here, a favor there. At first, it looked clean. Sports betting, event planning, some property plays. Owen had charm, looks, and money. People listened when he talked. He knew how to make men feel important and women feel safe. But under all that smooth talk was something darker, something cold. The first real offer came from a man named Rico, a smooth Venezuelan with diamond cufflinks and a watch worth more than some people's houses. They met at a private poker game in Del Mar. High rollers, low morals. Rico lost 20 grand that night. Owen won 30. On the way out, Rico put a hand on Owen's shoulder. "You play good," he said, "but do you ever think about playing for higher stakes?" Owen didn't flinch, just smiled that tight smile he had, the kind that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I'm listening," he said. "That's how it starts, always. No big contracts, no formal handshakes. Just a look between men who know they're about to cross a line they won't come back from." Rico didn't talk product, not yet. Just asked if Owen knew anyone in Vegas, anyone in Miami, maybe Tijuana. A few names were passed, a few meetings followed. Before long, Owen was helping move packages across borders. He didn't ask what was inside, not at first. He just made sure it moved safe and that no one talked. Owen wasn't the kind to get dirty himself. That's what made him different. He built networks, trusted the right criminals, paid them on time, never boasted, never made noise. While other dealers flashed Rolexes and guns, Owen played golf, owned beach property, smiled for magazine photos, and beneath it all, he built an empire, one brick at a time. Cocaine, ecstasy, steroids, pills, gambling, extortion, you name it, he had a cut in it, quiet, organized, clean on the outside, filthy underneath. And the craziest part? He slept like a baby. No guilt, no nightmares, not yet. They say every gangster has a moment when he realizes he's in too deep. For Owen O-Dog Hanson, that moment hadn't come yet. Not when he drove his Range Rover through Pacific Palisades, not when he paid his crew in cash and silence, not even when bodies started turning up near the water. No. That moment was still a few miles ahead, but it was coming, like a slow storm on the horizon. The first time Owen truly felt the weight of the life he'd built was in a parking garage beneath a hotel in downtown San Diego. It was near midnight, early summer, the air sticky with heat and ocean mist, the kind of night that makes the city feel alive, even when everything around it is dying. He sat alone in his matte black Range Rover, engine off, windows cracked, watching the entrance through the rearview mirror. In his hand, a burner phone buzzed once, then went dead. It was a message without words. A single buzz meant the drop went clean. 2 meant trouble. 3 meant don't come home. He waited a full minute, eyes steady on the mirror, before slipping the phone into the glove compartment beside a Glock 19 and an unregistered Beretta. Both were wiped clean, wrapped in microfiber, never fired by him, but his fingerprints were nowhere to be found, just in case. It was habit now. Paranoia, maybe. But in Owen's world, paranoia wasn't a weakness. It was survival. His phone buzzed again, just once, and he exhaled through his nose, calm and cold. A week earlier, one of his runners got picked up at the border. Dumb kid named Lyle, full of nerves and bullshit, walking through San Isidro with 10 grand worth of ecstasy shoved into a duffel with his gym clothes. No finesse, no patience. They caught him before he even cleared customs. Owen didn't flinch. Lyle wasn't trusted with real routes anyway. The drugs were a decoy. The real shipment went through Nogales 40 minutes earlier. By the time Lyle was sweating under a DEA lamp, Owen's money was already on its way to Miami. He'd learned early, always lose small to win big. But still, the arrest was noise, and Owen hated noise. He leaned back in the driver's seat, ran a hand down his face, rough with 2 days' stubble. His jaw clenched tight, the kind of tension that didn't show unless you knew what to look for. He hadn't slept in 38 hours, not really. Maybe caught a nap on the plane back from Cabo, but it didn't count. Real sleep didn't come easy anymore. Not with the weight of everything pressing down on him, the money, the people, the silence. He had a crew now, not a gang. That was sloppy. Gangs were loud, dumb, and emotional. His crew was structured, quiet, and clean. Ex-military, ex-cops, former athletes who'd been left behind by the system and wanted back in on their own terms. Owen didn't rule through fear. He ruled through loyalty. That, and a very clear understanding. Betray me, and you disappear. He didn't kill, not with his own hands, but he gave permission. That was worse in a way. Cleaner, easier, less messy. He'd become a man who could eat steak while knowing a guy he'd once called a friend was bleeding out in the trunk of a Charger off Highway 78. It changed him, sure, but not how you'd think. Owen didn't see himself as a villain. That's what made him dangerous. He saw himself as necessary, a middleman between chaos and order. He wasn't out there pushing dope to kids. He was running logistics, supply chains, movement, control. But deep down, buried under layers of justification and swagger, he knew the truth. It lived in his chest like a stone, heavy, cold, and unmovable. The Range Rover door opened and a tall man in a dark hoodie slipped into the passenger seat without a word. His name was Vaughn, ex-Army, covered in ink, face calm like he'd been carved from concrete. One of the few Owen actually trusted, not liked, trusted. "It's done," Vaughn said, low and steady. Drop went smooth. Cash is clean. 2.4, split across 3 bags. I checked all of it. Any tails? Nope. Switched cars twice. We're good. Owen nodded once. Enrico? Wants a meet. Owen didn't answer right away. He looked out the windshield, eyes narrowing on a flickering streetlight across the lot. Rico asking for a meet wasn't normal. The Venezuelan liked distance. He was smart. Ran things from behind, layers of middlemen, shell companies, and women who only knew him as the investor. If Rico wanted FaceTime, it meant something shifted, and not in a good way. "Where?" Owen asked. "Same beach house Wednesday, noon. Wants it quiet." "Of course he does," Owen muttered. They sat in silence for a while, the kind of silence that hung heavy between men who've seen too much to talk about. Vaughn lit a cigarette, cracked the window. "You think he knows about Lyle?" Vaughn asked finally. Owen shook his head. "Doesn't matter if he does. It was a fake run. The real product made it through." Vaughn looked over. "You think that kid talks?" "Lyle," Owen scoffed. "He'll talk, but he doesn't know shit that matters." Vaughn didn't respond, just nodded slowly, then flicked ash out the window. Owen started the engine, the low rumble filling the car like a heartbeat. "You hungry?" he asked. "Always." "There's a place in La Jolla, quiet. Good steak." And just like that, the tension slipped off them like an old coat. They didn't talk business over food. That was one of Owen's rules. Eat like men, work like wolves. They drove in silence, the city sliding past their windows, lights flickering like dying stars. 2 days later, Owen sat in a leather chair in a glass-walled room overlooking the ocean. The beach house wasn't really a house, more like a fortress wrapped in white stone and steel. with security cameras tucked in every corner and bulletproof windows that reflected the Pacific like a mirror. Rico stood by the bar, mixing 2 drinks. Tequila, neat. He handed one to Owen and sat across from him, not smiling. "You heard about the border hit," Rico said, eyes locked in. Owen nodded. "I planted it. Distraction. Real shipment landed clean." Rico sipped his drink, slow. "Still noise." "I know. I don't like noise." Owen leaned forward. "Neither do I." There was a pause, the sound of waves crashing far below. Somewhere outside, a gull screamed against the wind. "I have people asking questions," Rico said finally. "People in Colombia, Dubai, big players. They don't like hearing your name tied to arrests." "They won't hear it again." "They better not." Silence. Then Rico smiled, just a little. "You've made me a lot of money, Owen, more than most, but you're getting too visible. I keep a low profile, for now, but the heat's building. What do you want me to do?" "Pull back. Let someone else handle San Isidro for a while. Maybe step away from Mexico completely." Owen stared at him. "You want me out?" Rico shrugged. "I want you quiet, rich and retired. Let younger dogs chase bones. You've already eaten." That was the thing with men like Rico. They never said what they meant. This wasn't a suggestion. It was a warning wrapped in silk. Owen nodded, slow. "I'll think about it." "Think fast." Rico finished his drink and stood. The meeting was over. No hugs, no goodbyes. On the drive back, Owen didn't speak. Vaughn noticed. He didn't ask. He just drove, the road stretching out ahead like a promise or a threat. Back in his high-rise condo, Owen stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, drink in hand, staring out at the ocean. Retire? He laughed once, bitter. There was no out, not really. Men like him didn't retire. They disappeared one way or another. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was his real phone. A name flashed on the screen. Natalie. He hesitated, then answered. "Hey," her voice said, soft, familiar. "Hey," he replied, voice low. "Can I come by?" A pause. He thought about the gun in the drawer, the cash under the bed, the crew watching every corner of his life. Then he said, "Yeah." Doors open. He didn't know it then, but that call, that single word, would be the beginning of everything falling apart. Because Natalie wasn't just an old flame. She was the one person he ever trusted without checking twice. And that was his real mistake. Natalie showed up just past midnight, wearing a black hoodie and jeans, no makeup, hair tied back the way she used to when they were just kids in college, before all the money, before the whispers, before he became something else entirely. She didn't knock. She knew the door would be unlocked, just like always. Owen was in the kitchen, pouring himself another drink when she stepped in. He didn't look up right away. He didn't have to. He knew the way she moved, soft but confident, like someone who knew her place in the world, even if she didn't always like it. "I was beginning to think you weren't coming," he said. "I almost didn't," she replied, voice even, low. He turned to face her, and for a moment, time twisted. She looked older. Not in a bad way, just more real. Life had clearly thrown its weight on her shoulders, too. There were small lines under her eyes now, less laughter, more wear. But her gaze was still sharp, honest, dangerous. Owen leaned back against the counter, drink in hand, studying her. "You still drink tequila?" She nodded. "When it's good." He poured a second glass and slid it across the marble countertop. She took it, sipped once, and exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for months. They stood in silence, the kind that felt like something more than just absence of sound. There were things between them that hadn't been said in years, things they'd both buried. She was the last piece of his old life, the part he hadn't been able to kill or forget. "You look tired," she said finally. "Don't sleep much," he replied. "You used to." "Yeah, well, I used to play Sundays too." That earned the faintest smirk from her, but it didn't last. Her eyes drifted across the room, to the furniture that looked too expensive to be comfortable, the art that felt like it was bought to impress strangers, not because it meant anything. "This place doesn't feel like you," she said. "Maybe I'm not me anymore." There it was, the edge. The bitterness. Natalie heard it, but she didn't flinch. She'd seen Owen when he was broke, cocky, reckless. She'd seen him with mud on his jersey, with blood on his knuckles. She knew the real him, the one behind the designer watches and silent cars. "What do you want, Nat?" he asked. Not cold, just direct. She looked up, straight at him. "I need a favor." He took a slow drink and nodded once. Figured. "It's not like that. It's always like that." "No, Owen," she said, stepping forward now, the tequila glass forgotten on the counter. "This isn't about money. This isn't about getting back at you or using you. This is real." He raised an eyebrow. "All right, then talk." She pulled out a folded piece of paper from her hoodie pocket. Her hands shook, just a little, as she laid it on the counter. Owen unfolded it. A photo, blurry, grainy, probably from a parking lot security cam. It showed a man, tall, wearing a bomber jacket, hat low over his face, standing next to a black Dodge Charger. The second he saw the car, Owen's pulse shifted. "Where was this taken?" he asked. "Chula Vista, last week." "You sure?" She nodded. "He's watching me. He's been following me for a month now." "You tell the cops?" She gave him a look. "Do I look stupid?" Fair enough. Cops wouldn't help her. Not in this world. Not when her name was still tied to his in old FBI files. Owen stared at the photo again. He knew that car. Not just the make or model. That specific car. It belonged to a guy named Tony Vega, a mid-tier enforcer who used to run with one of Owen's old competitors back in the early days. Tony had a rep for being messy, the kind of guy who took things personal, who liked pain more than profit. Last Owen heard, Tony vanished 2 years ago after crossing someone in the Tijuana supply line. Word was he got gutted and dumped in a quarry. Guess not. "You think he's after you?" Owen asked. "I don't think," she said, steady now. "I know." Owen's mind started spinning, fast but quiet. If Tony was watching Natalie, it meant someone was either trying to get at him or trying to drag her back into something she walked away from. Either way, it was bad. "Why would he come after you now?" he asked. "I don't know," she said, "but I'm scared." That word, scared, didn't sit right coming out of her mouth. Natalie was fire, always had been. She didn't rattle easy. If she was scared, it meant the ground under her was really cracking. Owen sighed, walked over to the window, and stared out into the night. He could feel the walls tightening. Not just around her, around him too. "Okay," he said finally. "You'll stay here tonight. I'll have Vaughn look into this guy." "I don't need protection," she snapped. He turned slowly. "You do, whether you want it or not." She didn't argue, not this time. He poured another drink for them both. By morning, Vaughn had news. He met Owen down in the garage, same SUV, engine idling. "Tony Vega's alive," Vaughn said without preamble. "Been in Mexico the last 2 years. Word is he's working with one of Rico's old lieutenants, guy named Lazaro, big into revenge plays." Owen rubbed his temples. "Why Natalie? She used to move money for you, right? Back in the day?" "Small runs, low heat." "Well, someone wants to rattle the cage, and they're starting with your past." Owen nodded. "Pull security detail on her, low profile. And find me everything you can on Lazaro, where he eats, sleeps, pisses. I want it all." Vaughn grunted. "Copy that." As he pulled away, Owen leaned against the wall of the garage and closed his eyes. Everything was bleeding together now. Old enemies, old loves, old sins coming back with new faces. He thought of what Rico had said about retiring, stepping back. The timing wasn't coincidence. Rico wanted him quiet because something was coming, something heavy. And now Natalie was involved, which meant he couldn't walk away even if he wanted to. That night, Natalie sat on his couch, feet tucked under her, watching some old black and white movie on mute. Owen stood in the kitchen, watching her from a distance. He remembered the nights they used to lie in bed, her tracing the scars on his ribs from football, asking where each one came from. He remembered her laughter in cheap apartments, beer in plastic cups, ramen on the stove. He also remembered the night she walked out, told him she couldn't stay, not with what he was becoming, that she loved him. But love wasn't enough to drown in his darkness. He hadn't begged her to stay. Now, here she was in his home again, looking smaller than he remembered. Tired. "You ever regret it?" he asked quietly. She looked over, confused. "What?" "Walking away," she thought for a second. "Every day." He didn't expect that. It hit harder than he thought it would. "But I also knew," she added, "if I stayed, I wouldn't be me anymore." Owen nodded slowly. "I think I stopped being me a long time ago." They didn't speak after that. Not until much later, when the windows turned black with night and the city lights flickered across her face. She stood, walked over to him, and laid her head on his chest. For the first time in months, maybe years, Owen closed his eyes and let himself feel something real. But even in that moment, that stillness, he couldn't shake the sense that it was all temporary. Because in his world, peace didn't last. It was just a quiet breath before the next storm. Owen woke just after 5 a.m., heartbeat slow but heavy in his chest. He hadn't slept more than a couple of hours, but it was more than he'd managed in weeks. Natalie was still beside him, one arm tucked under her pillow, face half buried, breathing steady. For a moment, it felt like nothing had changed, like they were still 25, broke, reckless, and full of stupid dreams. But the silence in the room wasn't peace. It was pressure. Owen slid out of bed quietly, padded across the polished concrete floor, and stepped into the shower. He let the hot water run down his back, but it didn't relax him. His mind was already grinding. Lazaro, Tony Vega, Rico's warning, Natalie's photo. None of it felt isolated. The way it was all hitting at once, it wasn't random. Someone was pulling strings, and Owen could feel the leash tightening. By the time he stepped out of the shower, his phone was buzzing. Vaughn. Owen answered without a word. "Got eyes on Tony," Vaughn said. "He's here, not across the border. Been laying low in National City. Warehouse on 18th and Hoover. Rented under a fake name, but one of our people traced it through a utilities bill. Armed. Always, and he's not alone. Got at least 3 others with him, all Latin. Could be Lazaro's crew." Owen stayed silent for a moment. Then, "Don't touch him. Just watch." "You sure?" "Yeah, if he's the bait, I want to know who's holding the line." "You got it." He ended the call and stared out the window. The sun hadn't even broken the horizon yet, but the city was already humming, already full of people chasing something. Money, power, escape. And right now, Owen was chasing answers. He went back into the bedroom. Natalie was sitting up, wrapped in a blanket, hair messy, eyes still heavy with sleep. "You okay?" she asked. He nodded, pulling on a shirt. "Yeah, Vaughn found Tony." Her expression didn't shift much, but he could see the fear twitch in the corner of her mouth. She wasn't used to this anymore, being close to the fire. "Is it safe for me to be here?" she asked quietly. "No," Owen said, "but it's safer than anywhere else." He meant it. His condo was locked down with private security, coded elevators, and multiple escape routes. But even with all that, the truth sat between them. If someone really wanted her dead, walls wouldn't stop them. He sat on the edge of the bed, leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I think this is bigger than Tony," he said. "Rico's been pressuring me to pull back. Now Tony pops up and he's tied to Lazaro, who used to run under Rico." "You think Rico's behind it?" "I think someone wants to put me in a corner, make me vulnerable. First they rattle you. Next they take a shot at the network, get me to panic, make a mistake." Natalie looked down, fidgeting with the edge of the blanket. "You always used to say no one could touch you." "Yeah," he muttered. "I used to believe that too." That afternoon, Owen met with Miles, a tech guy who used to work intelligence before getting fired for skimming from a federal budget. Miles had helped Owen build the digital side of his empire. Crypto laundering, ghost IPs, server farms hidden in shipping containers. He wasn't flashy, just smart and scared enough to stay useful. They met in a soundproofed basement under a fake architecture firm downtown. Miles looked jittery, pale, always did. "I pulled everything I could on the Vega connection," he said, sliding a USB drive across the table. "There's chatter on a few dark boards, encrypted threads. Nothing specific, but there's movement. Mentions of your name, not just in cartel circles, Eastern European forums too. Owen's eyes narrowed. Eastern? Yeah, Serbia, Romania, even a couple of Russian logistics sites. Someone's sniffing around your old routes, asking for names, timetables. Rico? Doubt it. He's not that sloppy. This feels coordinated, like someone's assembling a puzzle and getting close to the edges. Owen didn't like that. He had built his network with surgical precision, everything compartmentalized. One crew never knew the other. Routes changed monthly. Drops were staggered and buried under fake shipments. If someone was pulling it together, it meant they had inside help. You trust your team? Miles asked. Owen looked up hard. Do I look like a guy who trusts anyone? Miles backed off. Right, sorry. Owen took the drive, stood, and turned to leave. Oh, and one more thing, Miles said. Your offshore accounts? 3 of them got pinged last night. Just pings, like someone's running trace software. Could be nothing. Could be someone hunting. Owen nodded once, already processing. That night, the condo was quiet again. Natalie had cooked. Nothing fancy, just pasta and garlic bread. But the smell reminded Owen of the last time his life had felt simple. They sat on the couch, not speaking much, just watching some old movie neither of them were paying attention to. At one point, she reached over and touched his hand. You ever wish it had gone different? She asked. He didn't look at her, just stared at the screen. Every day, he said, but you kept going. I didn't know how to stop. She nodded slowly. And now, he turned to her. Now I don't think I get to. Later, after she went to bed, he stood out on the balcony, the night wind brushing against his face. His phone buzzed. Vaughn, Owen answered. Talk to me. We lost eyes on Vega. Owen's stomach dropped slightly. When? 30 minutes ago. He left the warehouse, got picked up in a black SUV. Plates came back clean. Could be government. Could be someone using blanks. Any sign of Lazaro? No, but I think that SUV was more than just a ride. I think someone collected him. Owen's grip on the phone tightened. Find him. Now. He ended the call and stared down at the city. He could feel it. The walls closing in. The game changing. And for the first time in years, he wasn't sure he had the upper hand anymore. Not because he was weak, but because someone else had studied the board longer, and they were moving faster. By the next morning, Owen's body felt heavier than usual, not from fatigue, but from the pressure. The kind that creeps into your bones when you know something's coming, but you don't know from where. That quiet kind of dread. He was standing in front of the mirror, brushing his teeth, staring at himself like he was trying to remember who the hell he used to be. The man staring back had the build of an athlete, sure. Wide shoulders, strong jaw, arms still solid despite the years. But the eyes, they were different. Duller, hardened, like he hadn't seen the sun in a long time, even though he lived in San Diego. Natalie walked in behind him, barefoot, hoodie hanging off one shoulder, hair tied in a messy bun. She leaned against the doorway and looked at him for a moment, then said softly, You know they're closing in on you, right? He kept brushing. That obvious? Yeah, she said. It's in your eyes. You're too quiet. You always get quiet before you go to war. He spit into the sink, wiped his face, and turned to her. I think this is different. Different how? This feels calculated, like they've been watching me for longer than I realized. You think it's Rico? Rico's just a name on a bigger ladder. I think someone's using him. Natalie crossed her arms. Then what do we do? Owen gave her a look. We. That word shouldn't have hit him the way it did. It sounded good. Dangerous, but good. I need to get ahead of this, he said, before they start turning people on me. You think someone's flipped? I think someone's thinking about it. That afternoon, Owen met with Ray Dutch Alvarez, a former customs officer turned black market facilitator. Dutch was old school. Thick gray beard, still wore a tactical vest under a leather jacket even when he was just getting coffee. He had the kind of scars that made other men shut up when he walked into a room. And he owed Owen. Big. They met at an abandoned boatyard off Harbor Drive. tucked behind a line of rusting freighters and broken docks. Owen parked his car and waited until Dutch's armored Suburban pulled in behind him. The old man stepped out, chewing a toothpick, eyes sharp. "You look like shit," Dutch said. "I've been sleeping in pieces." "Join the club." They shook hands, then stepped inside one of the rusted storage units converted into a crude office. A single desk, a folding chair, and a wall covered in maps and satellite photos. "You said you needed intel," Dutch said, sitting down and flipping open a manila folder. "I ran a backtrace on your guy, Vega." "Guess what?" "Don't make me guess." "He's not just working with Lazaro, he's bankrolled." Owen leaned forward. "By who?" Dutch slid a photo across the table. It was grainy, taken from a rooftop cam, but clear enough. A man, mid-40s, tall, pale, bald, expensive suit, leaning into the back of a black SUV, talking to Tony Vega. Owen narrowed his eyes. "That's not cartel." "Nope," Dutch said. "That's corporate." "Who is he?" "Name's Viktor Sokolov, Russian. Fronts as a logistics consultant for an energy firm in Prague. Real job? He moves narcotics and guns for post-Soviet syndicates. And guess what else? He's been buying up dead smuggling routes along the southern border. Quiet. Systematic." "Why would a guy like that care about me?" Dutch leaned back. "Because you're in his way. You built your network on efficiency. Small crews. Quick drops, no middlemen. You made it hard for anyone else to muscle in. Now that the feds are watching the cartels again, Victor's trying to slide in through the cracks, and your name's still too loud." "So they want me gone?" Dutch nodded. "Not arrested, gone. You're bad for business." Owen sat back, fingers drumming on the edge of the desk. It made sense now. Rico pushing him to retire. The sudden reappearance of Tony Vega. The Eastern European chatter on Miles's dark web scans. It wasn't just pressure, it was surgical. And Natalie, she was the perfect lever. Someone who could make Owen act emotionally, sloppy. "They're using her," he said quietly. "Yup," Dutch said. "Probably didn't expect her to run to you, though. That might have screwed up their timeline." Owen stood up, fire starting to rise in his gut now. "How deep does this go?" "Too deep for one guy to dig alone," Dutch replied. "But if you're asking me if I'll help you, I'm in, just like before. One condition." "What?" "When the time comes, you leave. For good." Owen looked at him, jaw tight. "You really think I get that kind of ending?" Dutch shrugged. "No, but I'd like to believe it's still possible." Back at the condo, Natalie was pacing. She had that look again, the one she wore back when things were going sideways with her family, when her brother OD'd and she was the only one who had to clean up the mess. Owen walked in, and she looked at him like she needed something more than just safety. She needed clarity. "Well?" she asked. He told her everything about Viktor Sokolov, the Russians, the corporate front, the old routes being taken over. She didn't interrupt, just listened, her arms crossed, eyes locked on him. When he finished, she exhaled slow. "So we're not just dealing with Rico anymore?" "No, Rico's just the puppet. These guys, they're something else." "What do you do?" Owen looked out the window. The sun was starting to set, bleeding gold across the glass. "I go to war." That night, Owen activated the Ghost Protocol. It was something he and Vaughn had built years ago, a last resort play, a digital and physical shutdown of everything above ground. Accounts wiped, shell companies purged, all connections cut. Everyone in the network either went silent or went dark. No phones, no movement, just total blackout. Vaughn handled the logistics. Dutch started making calls to allies that owed him favors from the old world. Even Miles pulled back into his underground server hub and began deploying fake trails, making it look like Owen was fleeing to Brazil, then to Switzerland, then to Bangkok. But Owen, he stayed put, right in the heart of the city. Because if they wanted him, they were going to have to come get him. He knew it was only a matter of time before Sokolov's people made a move. He just didn't know it was going to come that night. At 2:38 a.m., Vaughn's voice crackled through the encrypted radio. "They're here." Owen was already awake, sitting on the couch, Glock on the table. Natalie in the bedroom behind a reinforced panic door. "How many?" Owen asked. 2 SUVs, 4 guys each, tactical gear, no colors, probably ex-mil. Owen stood, calm. His heart didn't even jump. This was the part he knew best: violence. "Let him come," he said. Vaughn was posted 2 buildings over, with eyes on the street. As soon as the SUVs parked, Vaughn picked off one of the drivers with a suppressed round to the skull. Silent, clean. But the others moved fast. They breached the lobby with flashbangs and precision, moved up the stairwell, didn't take the elevator. They were trained. Owen waited in the hallway just outside the panic room, weapon drawn, breath slow. First man came around the corner with an AR. Owen fired once, straight to the throat. The man dropped. Second one tried to flank. Owen ducked, rolled, and put 2 in his chest before he even cleared the frame. The other 6 scattered. One slipped on the blood and fell. Owen moved like a shadow, shot clean, low to high. No hesitation. By the time Vaughn arrived with backup from the south stairwell, only one was left breathing, bleeding out from a gut shot, wheezing. Owen knelt beside him. "Who sent you?" The man coughed blood and smiled through cracked teeth. "You're already dead," he rasped. "You just don't know it yet." Owen stood and pulled the trigger. No noise, no mercy, just silence. After the smoke cleared, Owen stood over the bodies, breathing deep, chest rising and falling in slow rhythm. He looked at Vaughn. "We're not running anymore," he said. "We never were," Vaughn replied. And deep in Owen's gut, under the rage, under the blood, something started to shift. He wasn't just fighting back now, he was burning it all down. By the time the sun rose over San Diego, the condo was clean. Too clean. The kind of clean that said something terrible happened here, but no one would ever prove it. Vaughn and his cleanup crew worked fast. Every shell casing accounted for, every bloodstain bleached and scrubbed from the floor. Even the bullets had been removed from the walls, replaced with identical drywall, and touched up with matching paint. It was surgical. Owen sat in his office, arms folded, eyes fixed on the screen in front of him. Grainy security footage of the attack, captured by a backup camera system Vaughn had stashed in the smoke detector. The feed showed 8 men moving like a SEAL team. Tight formations, silent communication, textbook breach. These weren't amateurs. These weren't cartel enforcers or street muscle either. These were contracted soldiers. He watched the video again. One frame in particular caught his attention, a man holding a suppressed MP5 with a small patch on his gear. A crow with wings outstretched, sitting on a coiled snake. Owen paused the footage, zoomed in. "That's not Russian," he muttered. Miles's voice buzzed in through the private line. "That patch is linked to a PMC, Eastern Europe, off-book, deniable. They've worked in Syria and Sudan under fake humanitarian licenses." Name? Operatives only know them as Black Hollow. No paper trail, no formal contracts. But rumor says Sokolov hired them a year ago to start replacing his cartel contacts. Cleaner, faster, less emotional. Owen nodded slowly. "Can you find out who runs Black Hollow?" "I can try," Miles said. "But these guys are ghosts. No LinkedIns, no leaks. They'll need something more aggressive. Call Dutch. Have him shake the tree." "Already did." Owen leaned back, exhaled through his nose. "Good." Behind him, Natalie stepped into the office, holding 2 mugs of coffee. Her face looked calm, but her hands shook slightly. She placed one mug beside him without a word, then sat on the couch across from the desk. "Were they here for me or you?" she asked quietly. He didn't answer right away. "They were here to send a message," he said, "but they didn't expect us to answer it." She wrapped both hands around her mug. "So what happens now?" Owen looked at her. "Now I hit back." Natalie looked tired, not physically, but spiritually, like she'd crossed a line inside herself that she swore she'd never cross again. "You keep doing this," she whispered. "War after war. Don't you get tired?" "I don't have the luxury of being tired," she nodded, eyes down. "Then let me help." Owen stared at her. "Help how?" "You know what I used to do for you," she said. "Banking, routing offshore payments. I still know how to chase money through shell companies. I've kept that knowledge sharp. You walked away from this life." "Maybe I walked too far," she said. Maybe I need to walk back a little to help you finish it. He didn't know what to say, so he just nodded once. Natalie stood, walked over, and kissed him softly on the forehead. Not romantic, not sexual, just human. Then she left the room. Owen stared at the paused video again. Black Hollow. That name wasn't just a hit squad, it was a key, and Owen needed the lock it opened. Dutch's voice came through late that night, rough and quiet. "You sitting down?" he asked. Owen stood in the dim light of his balcony, phone pressed to his ear. "Always. I found something on Black Hollow. It's worse than you think." "Go on." "They're not just working for Sokolov, they're working with him. Sokolov isn't the boss, he's a partner." Owen frowned. "Explain." "There's a guy, old MI6, name's Jalen Voss, British national. Used to run wet ops for the Crown until he vanished in EU9. Rumor says he went rogue, started his own unit with ex-spooks and foreign fighters, formed Black Hollow. He's been building it ever since." "What's the connection to me?" "Voss runs logistics. Sokolov moves product. Together they want to replace Rico, not just push him out. And to do that, they need your roots, your people, your map of the coast. You're the bottleneck, Owen. The one piece that doesn't fit. So they want to remove me." "They already tried," Dutch said. "They won't miss next time." There was a pause. Then Owen asked, "Can we get to Voss?" "Maybe. He's moving between Belize and Romania. He uses a villa outside Tulum to coordinate hits and recon. That might be your window." Owen didn't hesitate. "Book the jet." The Gulfstream touched down in Mexico before noon. Private runway, no customs, no questions. Owen stepped out in a simple black tee, jeans, sunglasses, and a dead man's focus. Vaughn followed, silent, carrying a black duffel with a short barrel rifle broken into parts. Waiting for them was Camilla, Dutch's contact in Quintana Roo. She was sharp, tanned, with military boots and sun-scorched knuckles. No pleasantries, no bullshit. "Voss's villa is 2 clicks west of Tulum near the jungle edge," she said. "Local police won't touch it. He pays them off. No surveillance on public channels. But I've got a guy inside who can disable the perimeter security for 10 minutes. "That's all I need," Owen said. Camilla handed him a burner phone and a crude hand-drawn map. "You go in, you go fast. Voss doesn't sleep in the same room twice. You miss your shot and he'll disappear for good." Owen looked at the map. "How many guards?" 6, maybe more. 2 dogs, 1 drone. Vaughn cracked his neck. "Let's go." Night fell like a curtain. The jungle swayed in a thick, humid wind. Mosquitoes buzzed around Owen's neck, but he didn't move. He crouched behind a line of palm brush, eyes on the villa. Sleek white walls, black-tinted windows, warm yellow light glowing behind thick curtains. Camilla's guy cut the power at exactly 2:13 a.m. The villa's lights flickered, then darkness. Owen moved, fast, quiet, precise. He breached the rear entrance, silenced pistol in one hand, combat knife in the other. First guard was slouched in a chair by the kitchen, asleep, stupid. Owen slit his throat and kept moving. Vaughn took out 2 more by the pool with a short burst from his suppressed submachine gun. The 4th spotted Owen in the hallway, drew his pistol, too slow. Owen fired twice, 1 in the neck, 1 in the gut. By the time they reached the master bedroom, the place was screaming silence. Inside, Jalen Voss stood in a white bathrobe, holding a gold-plated 9mm. "Impressive," he said with a clipped British accent. "I didn't expect you to come yourself." Owen didn't answer, just stared. "You're here for revenge, then?" Voss asked, smiling faintly. "Or are you finally ready to make a deal?" "I'm here for answers," Owen said. "And if I give them?" "You live," Voss exhaled, calm. "Sokolov plans to gut you from the inside. Your man Miles, already compromised. He's been feeding us route data for weeks." Owen didn't flinch, but the fire inside him sparked. Miles? Who else? "Rico was never in on it," Voss said. "But he's weak. We used his hesitation to create a vacuum. The only thing stopping us was your loyalty network. But now that we've rattled the cage," he smirked, "you're losing grip." Owen walked forward slowly, pistol raised. "Not yet," he said. He shot Voss in the leg. a clean through and through just below the knee. The Brit collapsed, screaming. Owen stood over him. "You're going to send a message to Sokolov, and then you're going to disappear." Voss coughed. "Why not just kill me?" "Because I want him scared." And with that, Owen walked out, leaving Voss howling into the darkness. As they boarded the jet back home, Owen stared out the window at the stars over Tulum. Vaughn leaned back and said, "What now?" Owen cracked his neck. "We burn Miles. And after that, we find Sokolov. And then?" Owen's eyes narrowed. "Then I bury every last one of them." The jet touched down just after 3 in the morning, under a blanket of clouds that wrapped San Diego in silence. There was no press waiting, no agents, no flashing lights, just the hum of the private terminal's generator and the smell of wet asphalt from an earlier storm. Owen didn't say much on the ride back into the city. He sat in the rear of the Escalade, staring out the window, replaying every conversation he'd had with Miles in the last 6 months. Every word felt heavier now, every casual suggestion, every random network issue, every routing change that Miles had proposed. All of it had been pieces on a chessboard, and Owen hadn't realized the other side was already in check. He didn't speak until they pulled into the underground garage below his backup condo on 14th and Broadway. Vaughn cut the engine and turned to him. "You sure you want to handle this yourself?" Owen didn't answer immediately. He opened the door, stepped out into the cold garage, and adjusted the black hoodie he wore over a ballistic vest. The silence was answer enough. Miles still operated from the same place he always did, a fake design agency on the second floor of a building near the East Village, just blocks away from the gas lamp nightlife that buzzed like a dying neon sign. His office didn't have signage, just a keypad and a camera. Owen walked straight up and rang the buzzer once. Miles's voice crackled through the speaker. "Yeah?" "It's me," Owen said. There was a pause, then a soft click as the door unlocked. Inside, the place was dim. Monitors lit up the room like blue ghosts. The air smelled like burnt coffee and old pizza boxes. Wires were coiled across the floor, tangled like veins. Miles was in the back room, sitting behind a triple-screen setup, hoodie half on, eyes bagged and red. His beard had grown patchy, and his fingers tapped nervously on a keyboard as Owen entered. "You're back early," he said, trying to sound casual. Owen didn't respond. He just stood there, hands in his pockets. Miles spun in his chair, smiled faintly. "Everything cool with Tulum?" Owen stared at him, flat, silent. Miles's smile faded. His eyes shifted. "I don't know what you've heard." "Stop," Owen said, calm and cold. "I want to hear it from you." Miles swallowed hard. "Owen, man, I didn't want to. They came to me. They threatened my sister, okay? You know she's still on probation. They had pictures. They knew where she lived." Owen nodded slowly. "So you gave them access to my routes, my accounts?" "Only some," Miles said quickly. "I gave them the fake routes at first, dummy runs. I bought time. But they said if I didn't give them something real, they'd cut her open and send me the pieces." "Then you should have come to me." "I was gonna," Miles said, voice cracking. "But then things started getting hot. The border bust, that Lyle kid, then Natalie. I didn't know who to trust anymore. I thought maybe you were slipping." Owen's jaw clenched. "I built this with you," he said quietly. "I brought you in when you were stealing government hardware and selling it on Craigslist. I made you rich. And when things got hard, you bet against me." Miles stood now, hands slightly raised. "I didn't bet against you, man. I panicked. Please, just let me disappear. I'll go to Canada, change my name. You won't hear from me again." Owen nodded. "Yeah, you're right." Miles blinked. "What?" "You're gonna disappear." There was a pause, half a breath, before Owen pulled the suppressed Glock from his waistband and put a bullet through Miles's right thigh. The man screamed and collapsed to the floor, grabbing at the wound, blood pumping through his fingers. "Jesus, Owen, please!" Owen walked slowly over and crouched down beside him. "This isn't about punishment," he said softly. "This is about sending a message." He reached into his pocket, pulled out a burner phone, and dropped it beside Miles. You're going to call Sokolov's handler. You're going to tell him I killed Vaughn and Dutch, that I'm bleeding, weak, that I'm going to fly to Brazil in 2 days to lay low. You'll give him the coordinates of a hangar in Imperial Beach. A trap. Miles whimpered, sweat pouring down his face. If I do that, they'll know I flipped. No, Owen said, because after you make that call, I'm going to shoot you in the head and burn this place to the ground. Miles's eyes widened. I said you'd disappear. Owen stood. A single shot echoed through the office, then silence. By sunrise, the building was nothing but ash. A faulty wiring fire would be the official cause. No body would be found, just scorched bones and melted tech. It would take the city a month to even start the investigation, and by then, the trail would be cold. Vaughn stood beside Owen on a rooftop across the street, watching the smoke rise into the dawn sky. That was personal, Vaughn said. They always are, Owen replied. Think they bought the trap? They will. Vaughn lit a cigarette and stared out toward the horizon. You know what comes next, right? Owen nodded. Yeah. Sokolov would send his best to that hangar, probably more of the Black Hollow crew, maybe even show up himself. It would be the last major move, the final push to wipe Owen off the board, but Owen wasn't planning to survive it, not in the way they thought. I want to talk to Natalie, Owen said suddenly. She's at the safe house, North County. Good. Bring her here, tonight. That evening, Natalie arrived at the backup condo, looking worn but composed. The city lights flickered behind her as she stepped inside, arms crossed. You did it, didn't you? She asked. Owen nodded. Miles is gone. Are you okay? He looked away. No, but I'm done feeling bad about it. She walked over and took his hand. So what now? Now we take them out, he said. All of them. He told her about the trap, the hangar, the fake intel, the fake plan to flee the country. He explained that Sokolov would commit heavy resources to intercept him there. It was their best shot to draw the leadership out in the open. She was quiet for a while. And if it works, she asked, then it's over. And if it doesn't? Owen didn't answer. Instead, he reached into a drawer and pulled out a black envelope. What's this? New ID, passport, credit line. Access to an account with 2 million clean. No ties, no trail. You take it, you disappear. Her jaw clenched. You're not doing this alone. I already am. I'm not leaving you behind, Owen. He stepped forward, put his hands on her shoulders, and looked her dead in the eyes. I need to know that no matter what happens to me, you get out, you live, you don't let this life pull you back under. Tears filled her eyes. I left once and I lost you. I'm not doing it again. You didn't lose me, he whispered. You saved yourself. She shook her head, leaned in and kissed him hard, with the kind of desperation that comes from knowing time's running out. That night, they didn't sleep. They lay together in silence, tangled in each other, the ticking clock between them louder than their hearts. Because both of them knew the end had already begun. The hangar sat quiet on the edge of Imperial Beach, tucked behind an abandoned private airstrip that hadn't seen legal flight traffic in over a decade. Rusted fencing curled around the property like barbed wire, dragged through time, and the air smelled of salt and jet fuel residue. The perfect place to disappear. Or to ambush a death squad. It was 3:14 a.m. Owen stood in the center of the massive, dimly lit structure, with the door half rolled up to sell the illusion of panic. 2 black SUVs were parked inside, one with fake Brazilian license plates, the other half loaded with duffel bags filled with shredded paper wrapped in bundles of counterfeit bills. It had to look real. He had to look like a man running, but Owen wasn't running. He was hunting. Up in the rafters, Vaughn lay flat on a steel beam, rifle resting on a sandbag, eyes on the approach. His heartbeat was slow, his breathing slower. The rest of the team, 6 of Owen's best, were scattered around the perimeter, hidden behind cargo crates and walls built of steel shipping containers. Silent, invisible. Each one briefed, paid in full, and promised nothing but survival. Owen had never asked anyone to die for him, but tonight, he wasn't asking. He was telling them they might. Earlier that day, Owen had sat across from Natalie in the dim light of a motel room off Route 94, just outside the city limits. The walls were thin, the bedsheets scratchy, the kind of place no one remembered checking into. She sat on the edge of the mattress, one leg tucked under the other, staring at him like she already knew what he was going to say. "Don't," she whispered. "I have to," he replied. She shook her head. "No, you want to, because you think dying for this will make everything worth it." He didn't answer right away. He just looked down at the Glock on the table between them, cleaned, oiled, loaded. "You think killing Sokolov will fix what you've done?" she said, voice cracking. "You think if you go down taking him with you, you get to be a martyr?" He looked at her, really looked. "No," he said. "But maybe it'll stop someone worse from taking my place." Her voice dropped. "You're not the monster, Owen, not compared to them. I'm just a different kind." She stood, walked over, and pressed her forehead to his. "You don't have to do this alone." He closed his eyes, whispered, "Yes, I do." And that was the last thing they said before she walked out. He didn't watch her go. He knew if he did, he'd follow. Back at the hangar, the first SUV arrived at 3:42 a.m. Headlights off, engine low, black paint that reflected nothing. It pulled up slowly, tires crunching gravel, stopping 10 feet from the half-open door. Then, silence. Vaughn's voice buzzed in through the comms. 2 in the front, 4 in the back, heavily armed, no insignia. Owen stood at the edge of the light, half shadowed, half exposed. He wanted them to see him, wanted them to feel like this was the final move. The cornered king. The driver's door opened. A man stepped out, tall, bald, clean suit, no expression. He looked like someone who'd kill you for getting his coffee order wrong, then go back to a crossword puzzle like nothing happened. It wasn't Sokolov, but it was someone close. The passenger side opened next. Another man, Latino, shorter, but stocky. Tony Vega, still alive, still walking, and still arrogant. He grinned when he saw Owen. Well, you really did come to say goodbye." Owen didn't speak. Tony stepped closer. "You know, we almost didn't believe Miles when he said you were folding. You always had a reputation for being a stubborn bastard." Owen kept his eyes steady. Tony walked right up to the edge of the shadows, tilted his head. "But you look tired, man. Real tired." "Maybe it's time, huh?" Owen said, calm and clear. "You're late," Tony laughed once. "Yeah? You got a plane to catch?" "No," Owen said. "You do." And with that, he gave the signal, a subtle flick of the wrist behind his back. From the rafters, Vaughn squeezed the trigger. The first shot hit the bald driver in the eye. He dropped like a bag of rocks. The second hit Tony in the chest, not lethal, but enough to knock him back onto the gravel, screaming in rage and pain. The rest of the hit team didn't have time to react. 2 of Owen's men opened fire from the containers flanking the SUV. Rounds pinged off the vehicle's frame, shattering windows and tearing through Kevlar. Another SUV screeched in behind the first one, reinforcement, but they'd planned for that. A shaped charge under the gravel exploded as soon as its tires crossed the hidden tripwire, flipping the vehicle into a ball of flame. The air turned red. The night howled with gunfire. Owen moved through the chaos like a ghost, shooting, reloading, shifting between shadows. His focus was absolute. Every breath a calculation, every step a purpose. The hit team scrambled, trained, disciplined, but not prepared for a counterattack this surgical. They were used to hitting soft targets, used to silence, but Owen was never going to die quiet. By the time the dust settled, 12 men lay dead. 3 of Owen's team were hit, 1 critical, 2 stable. Vaughn climbed down from the rafters, rifle still smoking. Owen walked over to Tony, who was coughing blood, propped up against the side of the bullet-riddled SUV. "Guess you weren't ready for this," Owen said. Tony laughed weakly. "You think this stops it?" "No," Owen said, "but it starts something else." Tony coughed again, smirked. "You know he's coming now, right? Sokolov's gonna come himself." Owen nodded. "That's the point." He looked at Vaughn. "Keep him alive, just barely." Then he turned and walked out of the hangar, into the cold morning air, breathing deep. The war wasn't over, but for the first time, it was on his terms. That afternoon, Owen met with Dutch in a dockside bar outside Chula Vista. It smelled like beer and boat oil, and the only other customer was a half-asleep fisherman nursing a tecate at the counter. Dutch slid a small black phone across the table. "You'll want to hear this," he said. Owen picked it up, pressed play. The voice was Sokolov's, calm, measured. Hanson made his move. Good. That means he's desperate. Have Voss call the cleaners. No more middlemen. No more teasing. I want his body in a box within the week. Owen ended the playback and slid the phone back. Dutch sipped his whiskey. "That was intercepted an hour after your ambush. Your little stunt worked. You forced his hand. Now we find out where he bleeds," Owen said. Dutch grinned. "I might know a place to start." He pulled out a flash drive and dropped it on the table. "One of my sources traced a shipment of military-grade gear being funneled through a fake NGO based in San Francisco. Humanitarian Front. Guess whose name is on the board of directors?" Owen picked up the drive. "Sokolov?" "Not directly, but his wife is. Her maiden name links to two of his holding companies. She's the pressure point." Owen leaned back, thinking. "You want to rattle a monster?" Dutch said. "You touch what he hides." Owen stood, sliding the flash drive into his pocket. "I don't rattle monsters," he said. "I kill them." Back at the condo, Natalie was waiting. He walked in and found her standing by the window, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the skyline. "I heard," she said without turning. "The hangar." He nodded. It was loud. She turned, walked over, and touched the side of his face, her fingers brushing a thin graze across his jawline. "You okay?" she asked. "I'm alive." "Is it enough?" "No," he said. "But it's a start." She hesitated. "I want to help," she said again. Owen looked at her. "I mean it," she said. "I know I can't fight like Vaughn, but I know how these people hide their money, their wives, their soft spots. I can find them." He nodded slowly. "Then let's bleed them." For the first time in a long time, she smiled. Not because things were safe, but because, together, they were finally dangerous. It was one of those mornings when the city felt like it was hiding something. Gray skies stretched across San Diego like a soaked blanket, casting a dull, static light over the skyline. It wasn't raining, but the air was wet, charged. People hurried with their heads down, as if they sensed something in the wind they couldn't explain. Owen stood by the window of the temporary safe house, a high-rise in downtown with thick curtains and no listed tenant. Vaughn was in the next room, disassembling and reassembling his rifle, like he did when he was thinking. Natalie sat at the dining table, surrounded by 2 laptops, 3 phones, and a mess of documents spread like a battlefield. She was deep in the numbers, cross-checking board members, LLCs, dummy corporations, and donor registries. Every bit of movement from Sokolov's financial world left a trace. No matter how careful they tried to be, money always had a scent. "You're sure this is her?" Owen asked, not taking his eyes off the skyline. "Positive," Natalie said. "Her name's Anna Rostova, born in Moscow. Married Sokolov in 2004. Changed her name on paper to Anna Caldwell when they moved into the U.S. under diplomatic protection. They fronted as foreign energy consultants. But by 2012, they had 5 shell companies routing funds through Belize and Switzerland. And the NGO? Humanitarian Safe Futures, Natalie said. Bullshit nonprofit that claims to provide satellite medical relief in Eastern Europe. But their tax filings are trash. They spend 2% on outreach, 40% on transportation logistics, and the rest vanishes into thin air. Guess where the cargo gets dropped? San Francisco, Owen muttered. Every 3rd week of the month. Owen finally turned from the window, walking over. "What's the angle?" "She's hosting a fundraising gala this Friday," Natalie said, tapping the laptop. "Downtown, high security, politicians, corporate execs, charity masks everywhere. But get this, she's the keynote. First time she's been public in over a year." Owen stared at the screen. There she was, Anna Caldwell. Mid-30s, strikingly elegant, blonde, always photographed with neutral expressions and tasteful jewelry. The kind of woman the media would call graceful, without realizing she could probably authorize a kill order over champagne. "What do you want to do?" Natalie asked, her voice low. "I want her scared," Owen said. "I want Sokolov to know that I can get to anything he touches, even the things he thinks are safe." Vaughn stepped into the room, wiping gun oil off his hands. "You plan on killing her?" he asked bluntly. Owen paused. "No, not yet. I want her to deliver a message." Vaughn nodded. "Then we'll need eyes on the venue, routines, travel paths." Natalie added, "I can spoof her event team, slip someone into the service staff." Owen looked at her. "No, not you." She didn't argue, but she didn't like it either. 2 days later, Owen stood in a suit for the first time in years. It was tailored, black, sharp. A security badge clipped to his belt said, "Marshall Investments, Logistics." The name didn't matter. What mattered was the disguise. Vaughn was in the van across the street, parked in a florist's delivery truck with blackout tint. Natalie had mapped out the gala floor from leaked blueprints she pulled off a hacked Dropbox folder. Every guest, every staff member, every hallway and exit had been memorized. Anna was expected at 8:30 p.m. Owen arrived at 7:45. The hotel lobby was a cathedral of glass and brass, modern, expensive, soulless. Waiters in white gloves moved like dancers, carrying trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Security was tight, not Secret Service tight, but enough to flag someone without the right smile. Owen played the role perfectly, smiling, silent, present but forgettable. He took his position near the side hallway that connected to the service elevator. The plan wasn't to grab her in front of the crowd. That would be stupid, loud, final. No, he needed to cut her off just as she was leaving, before her guards got her into the SUV. By 9:10 p.m., the room was buzzing. Wine and bullshit flowed like a script. Anna stepped up to the podium in a silver dress that probably cost more than most people's rent for a year. She thanked donors, talked about healing the wounded, quoted Gandhi, promised a better world. Owen stood in the shadows, jaw tight. "You don't get to look that clean and stay that dirty." When she finished, applause rang out. She smiled once, briefly, then stepped down from the stage with her handlers flanking her like a royal guard. They moved toward the private exit, toward the elevator. Vaughn's voice came through the earpiece. "Target approaching East Corridor. Security peeled off. 3 guards, all armed, unmarked." Owen moved. As Anna turned the corner into the hallway, Owen was already there, ahead of them, standing beside a cleaning cart like any other hotel staffer. He wore a hat, head down, pushing the cart slowly. One of the guards clocked him but didn't stop him. They passed him. That's when he struck. Fast, silent, clinical. He jabbed a tranquilizer syringe into the neck of the rearmost guard. The man went stiff, then collapsed. The second turned, drawing his weapon, but Owen stepped inside the man's stance, grabbed his wrist, and slammed his forearm into the wall, dislocating it with a crack. The gun fell. Anna screamed. The third guard hesitated, just long enough. Vaughn came from the far stairwell, silenced pistol raised, and dropped him with a single shot to the leg. "Clear," Vaughn said into the comms. Owen grabbed Anna, not rough but not gentle either, and pressed her against the wall. "I need you to listen very carefully," he said, calm and low. Her eyes were wild. "Who are you?" "You know who I am." Her expression changed. Not fear, not confusion, recognition. "Sokolov," she whispered. Owen nodded. "He's not untouchable. Tell him that." "You'll die for this." "Maybe," Owen said. "But you'll live to remember it." He pressed a photo into her hand, a picture of Sokolov's dead contractors from the hangar ambush. "Next time, I don't stop at the warning." Then he vanished into the stairwell with Vaughn. By the time the gala's internal security pieced together what happened, Anna was safe in her SUV, screaming into a burner phone, and Owen was already 5 miles away, stripped of his disguise, walking calmly down a side street near the harbor. Vaughn pulled up beside him in a nondescript sedan. "Message sent," he said. Owen got in, silent. They drove without speaking for a long time. Finally, Vaughn said, "You know what this means, right?" "He's coming." "No doubt." "And when he does," Owen said, "I won't miss." At the condo, Natalie stood waiting with a laptop open. Her face was pale. What? Owen asked as he stepped inside. I traced Sokolov's movement logs from their private aviation database, she said, typing fast. He's booked a flight, not to Europe, to the States, touching down tomorrow in Nevada, private airstrip outside of Reno. Owen's brow tightened. Why Reno? She looked up. Because that's where he built his fallback compound. Owen moved to her side. The screen showed satellite images, a compound the size of a military base, fenced off in the desert, dozens of buildings, heliports, armed watchtowers. A war zone, he muttered, more like a fortress. Vaughn joined them, chewing on a protein bar. We can't hit that without losing everyone. I know, Owen said. That's why we won't. Natalie looked confused. Then what? We draw him out, Owen said, the way we did with Anna, personal. Controlled. He stepped away, deep in thought. Sokolov's ego is the only thing bigger than his paranoia, Owen said. He won't hide after what I did to his wife. He'll want to end this himself. Natalie asked quietly, what if he doesn't take the bait? Owen didn't answer for a long time. Then he turned. Then we go in anyway. The air above Reno was dry and angry, the kind that burned your throat when you breathed too fast, the kind of air that didn't forgive. Flat plains stretched like a battlefield waiting for its war. In the distance, heat shimmered off the sand-colored rooftops of Sokolov's compound, a private empire built on stolen blood, ghost companies, and invisible money. Owen had been here before. Not this exact place, but this kind of place. It had the same DNA. It smelled like power, arrogance. Men who believed they'd built walls high enough to keep death out. But Owen wasn't death. He was the reminder of it. He stood in a rundown motel outside Fernley, just 20 miles from the compound, watching the surveillance feed Natalie had tapped from the compound's satellite ping. She had eyes on the drone footage now. It showed convoys moving in and out, new guards posted at every corner, private military vehicles. Sokolov had clearly returned with reinforcements and rage. He's here, Natalie said from the bed, eyes fixed on the laptop screen. Owen didn't look away. You get facial confirmation? She tapped the spacebar. The screen froze on a figure stepping out of a matte black G63 Mercedes. Broad-shouldered, tailored suit, shaved head, dark aviators. That's him, she said. Owen nodded. All right, we bleed him. Vaughn leaned against the dresser, loading rounds into a magazine with that same slow rhythm he always had before a storm. Just say the word. No more full-scale assault, Owen said. That compound's a kill box. We try to storm it, we're done. So what do we do? Natalie asked. Owen turned to them, calm, controlled. We cut his arms off. The next 3 days were surgical. One by one, Owen's team began dismantling Sokolov's outer circle. The first to go was Mikhail "Mickey" Zorenko, the logistics guy who managed the U.S.-Canada smuggling pipeline. Owen found him in Lake Tahoe, hiding in a glass mansion pretending to be a retired venture capitalist. He lasted 4 minutes, 2 to beg, 2 to bleed. Next was Grigor Aramov, crypto cleaner, hacker, and the man responsible for digitally scrubbing the money from Sokolov's war chest. Vaughn caught him leaving a brothel in Vegas, shot him in the knee, then handed him over to Dutch's people in the basement of a warehouse near the Strip. He talked fast. Too fast. They found 4 more names, 4 more targets. Within 72 hours, the syndicate's operations on the West Coast were in flames. Bank accounts frozen, contacts missing, shipments rerouted into government stings. Sokolov's silence didn't scare Owen. It confirmed him. He was wounded now, and wounded men either run or they bite. On the 4th night, Natalie intercepted a message, encrypted, buried under 7 firewalls and bouncing off servers from Bangkok to Belarus. But the signature was familiar. She called Owen into the room, hands shaking. You need to hear this. She pressed play. It was Sokolov, his voice like gravel soaked in vodka, calm, precise, the kind of tone that didn't need to shout to be terrifying. You've made your point, Owen. I underestimated you. That was my mistake. You've taken much from me. But I still have something you want. I know you. I know your weakness. You care. You still care. Meet me. Alone. No snipers. No ghost squad. You walk into the circle like a man, or I'll burn the rest of your world piece by piece. Bring her if you want. We'll see what you're willing to die for." Then silence. The file ended. Owen's fists clenched so tight his knuckles went white. Vaughn stepped into the room, eyes cold. "That bastard," Natalie swallowed, barely whispering. "He's trying to bait you into a trap." Owen said nothing for a long time. Then, finally, "Let him." The meet was set in a dry lake bed outside of Yarrington, an empty wasteland with nothing but cracked earth and mirages. No cover, no help, no tricks, just open death. Sokolov was old school that way, or maybe just arrogant. Owen left instructions with Vaughn. If he didn't come back within 60 minutes of the meeting start, they were to enact the fail-safe. Not a rescue mission, not vengeance, just obliteration. Dutch had stashed C4 in 6 vehicles parked along Sokolov's secondary routes. Natalie had planted a logic bomb in his financial systems that would wipe everything clean. Accounts, ledgers, crypto wallets, burn it all to digital ash. "If he kills me," Owen said, looking Natalie dead in the eyes, "I want him poor, paranoid, and hunted for the rest of his miserable life." She didn't cry. She didn't argue. She just nodded. Then, for the first time since all of this began, she kissed him not with fire, but with finality. Owen drove alone, no gun in his hand, but a storm in his chest. He arrived at the lake bed just before sunset. The sky was orange and bleeding. Clouds stretched like torn fabric across the horizon. Sokolov was already there, sitting in a white folding chair under a canvas tent, like it was a garden party. 3 guards stood nearby, dressed in plainclothes, but armored beneath. Owen stepped out of the car. No weapons visible, no backup. He walked across the cracked ground, slow and steady. Sokolov smiled like a man who believed in ghosts and thought himself one. "Owen," he said, standing, "you look tired." Owen didn't answer. "You've made quite the mess," Sokolov continued. "You should be proud. You hurt me." "Not many do." Owen took another step closer. "I didn't come for compliments." "No," Sokolov said. "You came to die." He pulled a pistol from his coat and pointed it at Owen's head. Owen didn't flinch. "I could end this now," Sokolov said. "Quick, clean." "But you won't." Sokolov raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "Because you need me to be afraid." Sokolov's eyes flickered. "Because if you kill me without hearing what I know," Owen said, stepping even closer, "you'll never be able to trust a single man in your house again." Sokolov's jaw tightened. "You think you've won something here," he said through clenched teeth. Owen leaned in. "I've seen your bunker. I know about the woman in Valencia. I know your fallback codes, your extraction plan. I've already fed that intel to people you can't buy." Sokolov stared at him, fury building behind his polished exterior. "You came here to die, Hanson." "No," Owen said. "I came here to choose how this ends." He pulled a small remote from his pocket and tossed it at Sokolov's feet. One button, glowing red. Sokolov picked it up. "What is this?" "Press it," Owen said, "and you'll lose every asset you've ever buried. Your name, your wife's name, your empire, gone." Sokolov looked at him, slowly realizing the scope. "You're bluffing." "Try me." The wind picked up. Dust swirled. Owen stepped back. "You had power. Now you have options. Leave the country, fade into the dirt, disappear, or press that button, make this personal again." Sokolov stared. Then, slowly, he turned the remote over in his hand. Owen began walking back toward the car. "You won't walk away from this," Sokolov said. Owen turned one last time. "I already did." And he drove off into the setting sun, alone, alive, for now. Back at the safe house, Vaughn stood outside, watching the road. When he saw Owen's headlights, he let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Natalie rushed down the stairs, barefoot, hair tied back, eyes wide with something between terror and hope. Owen stepped out of the car, still breathing, still walking. She didn't say anything, just threw her arms around him, and for the first time in a long time, he let himself be held. But this wasn't over. Not yet. because some men don't stop until the last light goes out. And in the distance, across the desert wind, Sokolov wasn't done. Not by a long shot. 3 days passed. 3 days of waiting, watching, listening. 3 days where Owen barely slept, barely ate, barely spoke. He spent most of the time on the rooftop of the safe house, a pair of binoculars slung around his neck, scanning the skyline like a soldier back from a war who knew the next one had already started. Because it had. He'd given Sokolov a chance to retreat, a sliver of dignity, a last escape from the fire that was about to consume both of them. But silence isn't surrender, and Owen knew better than anyone. Predators never run. They stalk. Natalie stayed busy. If she slowed down, she'd start thinking. And if she started thinking, she'd picture Owen with a bullet in his skull and her alone again, in some cold gray world where good men die and bad ones just buy new names. So instead, she worked. She worked like a ghost inside the machine, scrubbing traces of their movements, planting false identities across 5 countries, draining Sokolov's shell accounts one by one. She even pulled security footage from hotels across Europe and synced it with the facial recognition logs of Sokolov's lieutenants. By the 3rd night, she had a hit. "Madrid," she said quietly, standing behind Owen as he stared out over the city. He didn't turn around. "Who?" "Grigory, the Balkan fixer. I pulled his travel logs. He flew into Tijuana under a corporate alias registered in Estonia." Owen's fingers tightened around the railing. "When? Yesterday?" That was all he needed to hear. "You know what this means," Vaughn said later that night, pulling a vest over his black thermal shirt. "He's expanding the circle," Owen said. "He's going full offensive." Owen nodded once. "He's going to hit the people I haven't used yet, my backup contacts, my off-grid support. He's going to dig up every ghost I ever buried and rip their tongues out. And when that doesn't work," Owen looked up, "he'll come for you." Vaughn didn't flinch. "He better come hard." Then Vaughn looked at Natalie. "And her?" Owen turned to her, something hard and protective flashing in his eyes. "She disappears. Tonight." "No," she said, shaking her head. "It's not a debate." I said no. "You already did your part." "Exactly," she said, stepping closer. "Which means I'm in it now, fully. I'm not running every time things get ugly." Owen looked away. "This is past ugly. I don't care." He opened his mouth to argue, but she stopped him with a hand on his chest. "If I leave now, I live the rest of my life wondering if you made it out, if you're still breathing. Or if Sokolov's dogs dragged you into a desert ditch and dumped your body in pieces." Owen looked at her, really looked. She wasn't fragile. She was all in. He nodded. But inside, something twisted. He was dragging her toward the end, and he knew it. By the end of the week, 2 more bodies showed up. Both were Owen's old connections. One in Phoenix, a guy named Ruben who used to launder through tribal casinos. The other in Seattle, a woman named Della, former Navy turned underground arms dealer. Both had been tortured. Both had been left. The messages weren't subtle. Sokolov was painting the country red. And then it happened. At 3:17 a.m., the safe house alarm went off. Owen was already up, dressed, gun in hand. Vaughn came flying down the stairs, shirtless, rifle slung across his chest. Natalie was in the hallway, wide-eyed, clutching a duffel bag she'd packed just in case. Owen's voice cut through the air. "Exit Plan B, now." "No time," Vaughn snapped, checking the screen. "They're already inside the perimeter. 4-man entry team, at least 2 on the roof." Owen grabbed Natalie by the arm. "Downstairs, panic room." "No," she said. He didn't ask again. He shoved her toward the back staircase and tossed her the key card. "Go, wait for my signal." She disappeared. Owen turned to Vaughn. "Split?" "Always." They moved like twin shadows through the house, clearing rooms, listening for movement. A crack of gunfire split the silence, then another, and another. Then the house went black. Power cut. The bastards had come prepared. Owen moved on instinct. 2 intruders burst through the kitchen door. One got a bullet through the throat. The other caught Vaughn's knife between the ribs. A third came in through the hallway window, silenced MP7 raised. Owen grabbed a frying pan, no time to aim, and hurled it into the man's face. It bought just enough time to close the gap and snap the man's neck. "Roof!" Vaughn barked. They raced up the stairs, but the moment they reached the second floor, the ceiling exploded. Flash bang, white light. Owen's ears rang as he dropped to the floor, teeth clenched, vision flickering. Two more shooters descended through the roof. Vaughn opened fire, dropping one instantly. The second was fast, too fast, and got a round off that clipped Owen in the arm. Blood sprayed. He didn't feel it, didn't care. He launched himself at the bastard, disarmed him mid-tackle, and drove the man's skull into the hardwood until it cracked. And just like that, silence. Owen rose, panting, arm bleeding, chest heaving. Vaughn wiped blood off his face. "You hit?" "Just grazed." They looked around. 6 bodies, no backup in sight. But this wasn't the real attack. This was recon, a test. They both knew it. Owen limped down to the panic room and opened it. Natalie rushed into his arms. "Are we clear?" she whispered. "For now," he said. Her eyes went to his arm. "Jesus, Owen, I'm fine." Vaughn walked in behind them, face like stone. "They're not stopping," Owen nodded. "Then neither are we." They didn't wait. By dawn, the safe house was stripped, gear packed, weapons loaded, the house burned. Natalie dumped the remaining data onto an encrypted hard drive, then smashed her computers with a hammer. Vaughn wiped down the gear with bleach, and Owen stood outside in the smoke, staring at the horizon. "You know where we go next," he said. Vaughn nodded. "The source." Owen looked at Natalie. "You good?" She nodded, but her hands trembled. So Owen wrapped his around them and whispered, "Stay close. From here on out, we're ghosts." They drove through the Nevada desert like ghosts. No headlights, no music, no words. Just the low hum of the SUV's engine and the wind slicing across the plains. Owen sat in the front passenger seat, blood seeping through the bandage on his arm, his eyes locked on the horizon like he could see the end waiting there, crouched in the dirt with Sokolov's name carved into its teeth. Vaughn was driving, eyes sharp, body alert. He hadn't slept in over 24 hours, but it didn't show. Ex-military conditioning, battle rhythm. He thrived in chaos, but even now, Owen could see the edge creeping into his partner's face. They were operating on fumes. The last shootout had depleted most of their ammo. Dutch was off-grid. Their bank accounts were locked. Their fake identities were flagged. This was the part where most people gave up. But Owen didn't know how to quit, not when the enemy was still breathing. Natalie sat in the back, curled into the corner of the seat, clutching the encrypted drive like it was a newborn. The data inside it was more than a kill switch. It was the map to Sokolov's empire. Financial ledgers, location tags, bribe records, safe house blueprints. The last thread holding the empire together was buried inside that drive. "We'll hit the refinery in Tonopah first," Owen finally said. His voice was low, rasping. "That's where they're storing arms." "You're sure?" Vaughn asked. "Sokolov's men were wearing body armor tagged from Tonopah Supply and Mining. That place is a front, always has been." Natalie leaned forward. "And then what?" Owen didn't turn. "Then we take the fight to the compound." She stared at him. "There'll be dozens of guards. We won't get out alive." Owen looked back at her finally, eyes empty and electric. "Doesn't matter." The refinery stood like a corpse on the edge of town, all rusted pipes and decaying steel, surrounded by a perimeter fence covered in barbed wire and dust. It had been shut down officially for years, but unofficially, trucks still came and went in the dead of night. Owen had eyes on it from a bluff half a mile out. Through a pair of binoculars, he could see the silhouettes of armed guards pacing along the catwalks. 3 SUVs parked near the warehouse loading docks. One of them bore the same tactical tires as the ones that hit the safe house. It confirmed it. This was the storage facility. This was where the war weapons were housed. And this was where they would strike. "No distractions," Owen said. "No drawn-out firefight. In and out. Sabotage only." Vaughn nodded. "You want explosives?" No. We want to be ghosts, hit the gas lines, let the place cook itself after we're long gone. Natalie reached into her backpack and pulled out a hard case. Inside were 4 USB injectors, custom-made tools she'd designed herself. Plug them into any unsecured device, and they'd upload a worm that would fry security cameras and loop feeds in under 30 seconds. "You'll have 4 minutes," she said, handing them over. "That's all I need," Owen said. They moved under cover of night. Owen and Vaughn approached from the southeast, cutting through the wire near an old drainage pipe. No words between them, just nods and movement, professional, efficient, cold. Once inside, Owen slipped into the shadows, heading toward the main warehouse while Vaughn looped to the fuel reserves. Inside the warehouse, Owen saw it. Crates of weapons, labeled with foreign military markings. Ammunition stacked like gold bars. Armor, rifles, high-grade explosives, enough to arm a small army, enough to kill a city. He didn't hesitate. He planted the injectors into the camera systems and took out his phone. Typed in a short message. "Set. Hit the lines." Across the compound, Vaughn triggered a silent charge beneath the primary fuel valve. It didn't explode, not yet, but it cracked open the infrastructure. Leaking vapor would do the rest. They slipped out just as quietly as they came. By the time the facility's night team noticed the drop in gas pressure, it was too late. Owen watched from the bluff as a single ignition from a flicked cigarette or spark from a flashlight lit the refinery like the 4th of July. The sky bloomed orange, flames roared like monsters, and the war machine Sokolov had built under the desert, it burned. Back at the roadside motel, Owen stitched up his own arm in the bathroom. No numbing, no mirror. Just the needle, the thread, and the quiet grit of a man who didn't care how much pain he had left to feel. Natalie stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "You're bleeding more than you think," she said. "I've got more than I need," he replied. She didn't smile. She walked over, took the needle from his hand, and finished the last few stitches herself. Slow, careful. Not because she was scared to hurt him, but because she knew he'd never flinch. "You're not going to stop until you're dead," she whispered. Owen looked at her. "I'm not going to stop until he is." She touched his face. "You know I love you, right?" He stared at her, not with warmth, but with finality. "I know." The next morning, they got confirmation. Sokolov had issued a kill order, not just for Owen now, but for anyone connected to him. Old friends, former teammates, even distant business partners. His wrath had gone nuclear. The message was clear. No more hiding, no more negotiation. Only one of them was walking away from this. Vaughn laid the map out on the motel bed. Satellite images of Sokolov's Nevada compound stretched across 4 sheets. Guard rotation schedules, drone blind spots, access tunnels. "Dutch sent these before he went off-grid," he said. "We'll hit the compound from the northwest ridge. That's where they bring in cargo. Less guards, less cameras." "How do we breach?" Owen asked. "Use the ravine. Storm drain entrance. It feeds right into the lower substation. From there, we split." "I'll go for Sokolov," Owen said. "I'll run interference," Vaughn replied. Natalie opened her laptop. "And I'll finish what I started." They looked at her. "I've already uploaded the virus to his network," she explained. "But it needs to be activated from his internal server. Once we breach, I plug in. Then everything, his money, his infrastructure, his blackmail, all of it dies." Owen nodded. "This is it." No one said anything for a long moment, because they knew they weren't just planning an attack. They were planning a suicide mission. At midnight, they moved. The SUV coasted through the sand like a ghost, headlights off, tires padded with foam to muffle the sound. They ditched the vehicle 3 miles out, then continued on foot. The ravine was deeper than they expected. Shallow enough to walk, steep enough to fall and break your back. Vaughn led the descent, lowering Natalie on a rope while Owen covered them from above. They reached the drainage tunnel just past 2 a.m. It smelled like oil and death. Perfect. They moved through the dark, silent but synchronized. At the substation entrance, Vaughn rigged the door with a silent charge and blew it open with a muted hiss of gas. The hallway inside flickered with low lights, empty. They were in. From here, there were no more plans, only war, only death, Only one way out. The substation hallway smelled like steel and sweat. The kind of stale, bitter air you find in bunkers and basements where violence has lived longer than light. Pipes hissed overhead, leaking steam that curled into the fluorescent glow. Concrete walls echoed every footstep like a whisper of death. Owen moved first, rifle up, eyes locked ahead, each step deliberate. Behind him, Vaughn followed close with a suppressed MP5, scanning the rear. Natalie trailed between them, head low, her backpack pressed tight to her spine. Inside it, a single hard drive held Sokolov's empire on a digital noose. They were 20 feet into the corridor when the first guard appeared. He was big, bearded, built like a slab of muscle wrapped in black tactical gear. He came around a corner, holding a rifle like he was born with it. Owen fired before the man could register what was happening. One shot, neck gone. The man dropped like a bag of wet cement. "Clock starts now," Owen muttered. They moved faster. The layout Dutch had provided was mostly accurate, but the deeper they went, the more things felt unfinished. As if Sokolov had expanded the compound in secret. There were doors that shouldn't exist, corridors not marked on the map, rooms with cold air and concrete floors that smelled faintly of bleach and blood. "Torture wing," Vaughn whispered, pausing at a thick metal door with scratches along the bottom edge. "Leave it," Owen said. "We're not here for ghosts." They passed it, but none of them forgot it. They reached the main server room 20 minutes in. It was behind a biometric lock, fingerprint, retina, voice. But Natalie was already prepared. She pulled out a black pouch, unzipped it, and removed a thin, silver rod no bigger than a pencil. At the tip was a small lens she had wired with a cracked sample of Sokolov's own voice, pulled from intercepted calls. She placed it against the panel. "Voice authentication required," the system said. She played the audio. "Sokolov, access code 64 Delta Prime." The system blinked. "Voice match confirmed. Access granted." The door slid open. Inside was a frozen cave of tech, humming towers, blinking lights, a mainframe with more security than most government buildings. Natalie set her laptop on the counter and plugged in the drive. "I need 10 minutes, she whispered. "Then everything goes dark." Owen nodded. "You have 8. She worked, fingers flying. Lines of code ran across the screen like a war chant. "Once it hits 100%, she said, "this place becomes a coffin." Owen turned to Vaughn. "We buy her time." And then hell arrived. 3 guards burst into the hallway from the west tunnel. The first dropped before he could even shout. Vaughn put a burst into his chest. The second fired wildly, bullets hammering the doorframe as Owen ducked behind a support beam. The third tried to flank. Bad mistake. Owen stepped out and shot him through the mouth mid-yell. "More coming," Vaughn barked. "Heavy gear." Owen rolled a flashbang into the corridor. It popped, white hot. Screams followed. More footsteps, more steel. Natalie's voice came through the headset. 30%! Owen knelt at the corner and fired again. 2 more men fell. Blood sprayed the walls like graffiti. Vaughn tossed a smoke grenade and moved up the hallway. "I'm going to block the southern wing. Buy more time. Take care of yourself. You too." And he was gone. Owen stayed by the server room, reloading with smooth precision. He heard movement, soft, close, then click. He spun. A man was standing in the shadows of the opposite doorway, slim, quiet, knife in hand, too close to shoot. Owen blocked the first slash with his forearm. The blade scraped off his vest and bit into his shoulder. Pain exploded. He didn't care. He drove his knee into the attacker's gut, grabbed the wrist, twisted, broke it. The knife fell. The man didn't scream, just went for his sidearm. Owen slammed his fist into the man's throat, once, twice, then pulled his pistol and fired 2 rounds into the skull. Gone. He staggered back to the doorway, blood dripping down his arm. "Natalie!" 75%, she shouted. "Get ready to move." Behind him, more boots pounded toward them, another squad. He had 1 mag left, not enough. He grabbed the last grenade from his vest, not flashbang, frag, popped the pin, tossed it down the hall. It detonated with a boom that shook the floor. Silence followed. Owen looked back into the room. Natalie was crying, not fear, victory. "98%, she whispered. "Come on." The doorframe crackled. Sparks flew, smoke drifted, alarms began to blare, red lights flooded the hall, and then, system breach complete. Everything went black. Then came the emergency lighting. Red strobes, sirens. Sokolov's entire digital infrastructure had just died. Bank accounts gone. Offshore holdings wiped. Weapon orders, security networks, transaction trails, internal communications erased. Natalie stood, pale, eyes wide. "It's done," she said. Owen nodded. "Then so are we." "Where's Vaughn?" "He'll meet us outside." But Vaughn wasn't outside. When they reached the surface exit, a side stairwell that opened into the desert night, Owen stopped. There was no sign of him, just blood, not fresh. A trail. "Shit," Owen muttered. "Natalie, go to the SUV, start the engine. I'm not leaving without you." "You won't," she ran. Owen followed the trail around the back of the compound wall, and that's when he saw it. Vaughn, kneeling, hands zip-tied, gun at his head, and behind him, Sokolov, alive, smiling, holding the pistol like a lover's touch. "I expected more from you, Owen," he said. Owen didn't flinch. "Let him go." "I think not." "You've lost," Sokolov grinned. "You think this is about money? I have more buried in Siberia than you'll make in 10 lifetimes. Not anymore." Owen tossed a small drive onto the sand. "It's gone." Sokolov glanced down. For the first time, his smile faltered. Then came the rage. He turned the gun toward Vaughn. Owen moved, faster than pain, faster than thought. He pulled the trigger twice, once into the leg of Sokolov, the other into his shoulder. The Russian dropped like a brick. Vaughn rolled, screaming through the pain of a broken rib. Owen ran over, cut the ties, helped him up. "You all right?" Vaughn spat blood. "Never better." Owen looked back at Sokolov, bleeding, coughing, still alive, barely. "You should have stayed in Russia," Owen said. Sokolov looked up, hatred pouring from his eyes. "You think you've won something?" Owen raised his pistol. Sokolov sneered. "Do it." But Owen didn't. Not yet. He walked closer, put the barrel to Sokolov's temple. "You took my life," Owen whispered. "My team, my peace. You touched the one thing I cared about." "Then kill me." "No." Owen pulled the gun away. "I want you to live long enough to feel what powerless tastes like." Sokolov blinked, confused, and then Owen pistol-whipped him across the face, hard. The Russian dropped into unconsciousness. Owen turned to Vaughn. "Let's go." They disappeared into the desert night, the compound behind them in flames, the empire dead, the king dethroned. But the war, not quite over, because something was still coming, something bigger, and Owen could feel it in his bones. They drove through the night with Vaughn in the back seat, bleeding but conscious, mumbling obscenities between clenched teeth, while Natalie pressed a towel to the gash on his side. Owen kept his eyes on the cracked highway, both hands on the wheel, knuckles bone white. The SUV was stolen, the plates were clean. The road out of Nevada was dead silent, not a soul for miles. But Owen's nerves weren't quiet. He couldn't shake the feeling in his gut. Something was wrong. They should have felt relief. They'd destroyed Sokolov's data centers, lit his refinery on fire, crippled his cash flow, brought him to his knees in the dirt. So why did it feel like none of it mattered? Natalie spoke from the back, her voice low and cautious. "He gave up too easy." Owen's jaw tightened. He'd been thinking the same thing. Sokolov was a monster, but monsters like him didn't go down without dragging someone into the pit with them. The fact that he hadn't screamed, hadn't begged, hadn't even cursed them as Owen dropped him in the dust, that meant he knew something worse. Owen's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. Vaughn was pale, but alive, still had some fire in him. "You good?" Owen asked. "Never better," Vaughn muttered, then coughed. "We getting stitched up or just gonna bleed all the way back to San Diego?" Owen didn't answer. He pulled off the highway and turned down a dirt road leading to a hunting cabin they'd used once before, years ago when they were first building the early networks. It was off-grid, hidden in the hills, a place ghosts went when they needed to disappear. But tonight, It was going to become a war room, because Owen had unfinished business, and Sokolov wasn't the last name on his list. By noon, Vaughn was stitched, sedated, and resting on a blood-stained cot in the corner. Natalie had set up her laptop on the old kitchen table and was sorting through the debris from Sokolov's corrupted drives. A lot of the files were unrecoverable. The rest? Heavily encrypted. Owen sat across from her, sipping black coffee and staring at the scrolling code. She looked at him and said, "You ever hear of a man named Anton Markovich?" The name didn't ring. Natalie leaned forward. Came up in one of the fractured directories Sokolov had hidden inside a dummy file labeled Humanitarian Aid Manifests. When I decrypted it, I found 5 references to offshore meetings numbered only as AM or A prime. Could be code for something else. She shook her head. No, there's a pattern. Bank transfers signed with AM3, encrypted messages routed through IP blocks tied to private military accounts, same ones Sokolov used. But here's the kicker. A number of those transactions originated before Sokolov ever built his network. Owen's eyes narrowed. You're saying someone was running things before him? She nodded slowly. I think Sokolov wasn't the architect, just the enforcer. Owen leaned back, thinking. For years, he believed Sokolov was the pinnacle, the one at the top. But if there was another player, one who let Sokolov build, fight, and fall, then all of this had been part of a larger structure. What else do you have on him? Natalie brought up a photo, blurry, taken from a black market surveillance drone. A man in a cream suit standing beside an armored convoy in southern Ukraine. Face partly obscured by shadows, but just enough detail to see the cold precision in his stance. Anton Markovich, she said, ex-KGB, went underground in 1999. Reappeared in 2006 as a consultant for Eastern oil firms. Real job? Cleaning assets, disposing of liabilities, and building networks. He built Sokolov, Owen muttered. He built dozens like him, Natalie said, each with a different front. Arms, drugs, crypto, real estate, organ trade. He doesn't control one empire. He sells them, leases them, and if they fall, he's already moved on to the next. So taking down Sokolov, Owen paused, was like knocking over a pawn, Natalie nodded. And this guy, he's the king. A long silence filled the room. Vaughn groaned from the cot. Well, that's just fucking peachy. Owen stood and started pacing. You think he's in the States? No, Natalie said. But I found something else. She opened another file, heavily corrupted but partially readable. It's a message from Sokolov, she said. Addressed to AM, sent 3 days before we breached the compound. She played the audio. The translation software did its best to interpret the garbled Russian. The American is coming. I have delayed him, but his reach is longer than expected. I request permission to execute the terminal protocol. He must not touch the vault. Natalie paused. Vault? Owen's mind started spinning. You think he meant money? I think he meant something worse. That night, after Vaughn had passed out from painkillers, Owen sat with Natalie on the back porch of the cabin, a bottle of whiskey between them. Why didn't Sokolov try to kill me in that lake bed? He asked suddenly. She didn't respond. Why give me a chance to choose how it ends? He turned to her. He was stalling. Natalie looked at him, realizing what he was implying. He knew we were going to win, Owen said. But he wasn't trying to stop us. He was buying time. For what? Owen took a slow sip of whiskey. For Markovich. The next day, Dutch resurfaced. He called from a scrambled line, his voice more hoarse than usual. You idiots kicked a hornet's nest. We know, Owen said. No, you don't. I've been digging since you went dark. I got eyes in Prague, in Malta, in goddamn Mongolia, and they're all saying the same thing. Anton Markovich is on the move. Where to? Dutch didn't answer right away. Then, Washington. Owen blinked. What? He's flying into D.C. on a diplomatic clearance under a Belarusian business visa. No flags, no alerts, he's being invited. Invited by who? I don't know, but I've got chatter about a deal. Something involving defense contracts, security algorithms, and private AI software. Owen stood up. Jesus Christ. Natalie stepped into the room. What's happening? Owen looked at her. Markovich is making his next move, inside our government. Dutch said one last thing before hanging up. If you're going after this guy, you won't just be a criminal anymore, Owen. What will I be? Dutch paused. A traitor. The cabin felt smaller the moment Dutch hung up. The room was dead silent. The only sound was the low whir of Natalie's laptop fan and Vaughn's labored breathing from the corner. Owen stood in the center, hands on his hips, staring at nothing. He wasn't frozen. He was processing. Anton Markovich. It wasn't just a name. It was the name behind everything. Behind Sokolov. Behind the pipelines. Behind the system. And now he was walking into Washington, wearing a suit and shaking hands with the same people who once investigated Owen for racketeering. It wasn't just treason. It was a magic trick. Power hiding in plain sight. Owen finally spoke. He's not moving into D.C. to start something, he said. He's there to finish it. Natalie turned away from her screen. What does that mean? Owen met her eyes. He's bought someone, maybe a senator, maybe a lobbyist, maybe more. And whatever deal he's about to make, it's going to give him legal protection in the U.S. Vaughn coughed behind them. Guy's building a new empire, with government clearance. Owen nodded. And if that happens, we can't touch him. Natalie's voice was cold. Then we get to him before the deal closes. By noon, the next day, Natalie had traced Anton's diplomatic clearance to a Belarusian defense trade delegation operating under the name Sovereign Gate Holdings. The cover was airtight. The delegation was supposedly in D.C. for a closed-door security summit, with 2 U.S. defense contractors and a panel of advisors with ties to Homeland Security. All perfectly legal, all perfectly rotten. Dutch sent an encrypted email 2 hours later. Subject, he's here. Body, checked into the Mandarin Oriental Hotel, private suite, 3rd floor, 2 floors cleared for security, 2 teams of ex-Israeli and Serbian bodyguards, cameras off-grid, no local PD access. Attached was a single image, Anton Markovich, stepping out of a Blacktown car in a white suit, flanked by men in suits who looked more like predators than security. Owen stared at the photo for a long time. He wasn't angry, he was sure. Natalie leaned over his shoulder. How do we even get close to him? Owen turned slowly. I have to get arrested. The plan was insane, reckless, doomed to fail unless executed with surgical precision. Owen drove into D.C. with a fake plate and a pistol tucked into the glove box of a stolen Audi. Vaughn and Natalie stayed behind at a nearby safe house, tapped into surveillance feeds. Dutch had already wired a contact in the D.C. Metro PD, an old ex-federal who still owed him a favor. They'd make sure Owen didn't disappear into the system before the play was complete. The goal wasn't jail. The goal was entry. Because Markovich was scheduled to meet with a Homeland Security panel inside a federal building at 8:30 a.m. sharp. That building, shared with the field office of the DEA, Owen's old enemies. He drove straight into the lobby at 8:10 a.m., parked illegally, and walked in with nothing but a forged ID and a briefcase full of shredded intelligence reports linking Markovich to international trafficking operations. He walked up to the front desk and calmly said, I have evidence of treason. You'll want to call someone. It didn't take long. By 8:20 a.m., he was in handcuffs. By 8:23, he was being hauled to a secure floor. And by 8:26, Anton Markovich stepped off the elevator, right past the holding cell where Owen sat. Their eyes met. Markovich didn't flinch. He smiled. Of course, Owen thought. He already knew. Natalie's voice crackled in Vaughn's earpiece. Owen's been processed. He's in holding. Vaughn, now parked 2 blocks away in a maintenance van disguised with a fake utility company logo, replied, How's the feed? Spotty. They've shut off most of the network inside, but I'm watching the external cams. I think I can breach one of the internal panels if I get another 30 seconds. Do it. Inside the building, Owen sat in a cold metal chair. The room was sterile, gray walls, no window, single table. 2 DEA agents sat across from him. One was young, trying to act hard. The other was older, bored. You know how long you're going away this time? The young one asked, flipping through a manila folder filled with nothing real. Owen smiled. Probably forever. You think this is funny? No, Owen said, but he does. Who? Owen leaned forward. Anton Markovich, Belarusian, ex-KGB, currently upstairs, sipping tea with your bosses. The young agent blinked. What the hell are you talking about? I'm talking about the man who built half the black market supply chain in the U.S. and bought himself a golden pass to the front door of Homeland Security. The agent looked confused. You got proof? No, Owen said, but I have a voice. Not enough, Owen smiled again. It's not for you. Back in the safe house, Natalie shouted, I'm in! She'd hacked into one of the building's old fiber lines, a vulnerability Dutch had told her about. It gave her temporary access to a small feed from the third-floor conference room. She hit record. On screen, Anton Markovich, standing at the head of a table with 2 U.S. defense contractors, a Homeland Security advisor, and an unnamed senator from Virginia. Their conversation, pure corruption. We're prepared to move 50% of the load through diplomatic cargo, Anton said in perfect English. In exchange, we want the full extension of legal immunity for our forward agents. Your people will get their cut, same terms as Dubai. And if someone talks? One of the contractors asked. Anton smiled. They won't. Natalie uploaded the feed directly into 3 separate secure servers across Europe and 1 mirrored copy to Dutch. She called Vaughn. We have him, on video, talking about moving product and bribing U.S. officials. Vaughn smiled. Then it's time to blow this open. Inside the federal building, a loud buzz rang out through the hallways. Power flickered. For a brief moment, every screen inside the building displayed the same feed. The conference room, Anton Markovich, and the treasonous conversation. Then everything went black. Owen smiled. The agent stared at him, frozen. In the chaos, alarms went off, doors unlocked. Owen stood, walked out. No one stopped him, because the building was already imploding from the inside. He met Vaughn outside, slipping into the van as sirens screamed behind them. Natalie was already inside, breathing hard, shaking with adrenaline. Did we get it? She asked. Owen held up a thumb drive. 4 sources, mirrored. They'll try to spin it, Vaughn said. Blame it on deep fakes, misinformation. Let them try, Owen said. Where to now? Natalie asked. Owen stared out the windshield. Wherever Markovich runs. But Markovich didn't run. He disappeared. By that evening, Homeland Security denied ever meeting him. The hotel room was empty. The plane manifest gone. The Belarusian trade delegation dissolved. Every name on the list vanished from every record, and within 24 hours, the death toll began. 2 journalists in D.C. killed in a robbery, a U.S. contractor dead in a car crash, one of the senators caught on tape. Heart attack. It wasn't over. The Hydra had simply cut its own heads to survive. At the safe house, Vaughn asked the question no one wanted to face. What if we can't kill him? Owen didn't hesitate. Then we outlive him, Natalie asked. You think he's scared now? Owen shook his head. No, but he's watching. Then he looked at them both and said the only thing left to say. Next time, we don't warn him. Owen stood on the rooftop of an abandoned observatory outside Prague, wrapped in snow and silence, watching the eastern sky bleed purple as dawn crawled up behind the mountains. Wind cut across the hill, bitter and sharp, biting his cheeks. He didn't flinch. 6 months. That's how long it had been since Washington, since Markovich disappeared, since everything changed. Sokolov had been extradited to The Hague after Owen leaked financial records to Interpol. Several high-ranking American officials were retired early, while others were swept under the rug and reassigned with meaningless titles and empty offices. No convictions, no charges, just silence. Controlled silence. Vaughn had gone dark. Last message said he was heading into Eastern Africa to chase down the last remnants of Markovich's trafficking ring. If I don't write again, he had said, just know I went out with my boots on. Natalie was working as a systems ghost now, off-grid, changing names monthly, moving through cities like vapor. She and Owen had split, not because they stopped caring, but because they had to. As long as Markovich was out there, attachment was a liability. They both knew it. They both hurt from it. But Owen didn't slow down. He couldn't, because he hadn't heard the shot that ended this yet. He moved through Prague like a shadow, wearing the face of a retired contractor named Michael Baron. Burnt fingerprints, fractured ID chain, cash-only life. He met a Russian arms broker near a bathhouse in Shishkov, a Slovak hacker outside a burned-out cathedral in Brno, and a Ukrainian runner who claimed to have once driven for Markovich when he operated under a Polish identity. Each breadcrumb pointed to one place, Zurich. That's where the last offshore vault was, the one Sokolov begged Markovich to protect, not just for money, but something else, a ledger. A real one, one that couldn't be digitized, couldn't be encrypted, couldn't be hacked. Hard copy, names, dates, deals, deaths. The vault was said to be buried beneath a shell company registered as a cultural arts non-profit, Solari Foundation, tucked inside an art gallery overlooking Lake Zurich. That ledger? It wasn't just blackmail. It was insurance. And Owen was going to steal it. The gallery stood tall and glassy, reflecting the lake like a mirror. Inside, white walls carried modern art in blood reds and ink blacks. Tourists passed through, blind to the quiet security. But Owen wasn't a tourist. He'd cased the building for 2 days, tracked guard rotations, watched delivery schedules. The vault was underground, behind a display labeled the Iron Age of Intuition. Clever, hidden in plain sight. He moved in on a Thursday, dressed in a gray trench coat, posing as a courier delivering a sculpture from Vienna. Security waved him in after checking the documents. Inside the sculpture, a drone jammer, a cutting tool, and a suppressed Glock. He went in at 2:07 p.m. By 2:14, the security feeds looped. By 2:19, 2 guards were unconscious in the freight hallway. And by 2:25, he was in the basement, standing before a titanium wall that looked like part of the foundation, but gave off heat signatures too precise to be structural. He placed a small charge under the seam. Boom, small, controlled. Inside, a temperature-controlled room, lined in black leather. 1 desk, 2 chairs, a safe. And in the center, the ledger, bound in worn leather with pages yellowed by time and paranoia. Owen opened it. Names, accounts, transactions, bribes, political leverage, terror cells. Arms deals, trafficking routes. It was all here. Not just Sokolov, not just Markovich, but all of them. Half of the global power structure, billionaires, generals, CEOs, men who'd never get their hands dirty, but whose fingerprints were soaked in blood. He took photos of every page. Then, he set fire to the original. No one else would wield it. This wasn't blackmail. This was closure. By the time he left Zurich, a dozen men across Europe were either dead, in hiding, or deleting their lives from every known server. The shockwaves spread fast. Anton Markovich resurfaced 4 days later, not publicly, not politically, but personally. Owen found the envelope in his hotel room in Vienna. No address, no stamps, just a name, O.D. Inside, a photo. Natalie, bound, bruised, alive. A note attached, written in Cyrillic, "You wanted the end. Now you can earn it." Below that, coordinates, Istanbul. Owen didn't waste time. He flew commercial under a Turkish alias and landed at 3:23 a.m. It was raining. Istanbul was alive with color and chaos, but all he saw were the reflections in puddles and the blurred face of Natalie's photo burned into his mind. The coordinates led to an old shipyard, abandoned, rotting, the perfect place for ghosts to kill each other. He entered alone, no backup, no plan, just steel in his eyes and a pistol in his coat. Inside the warehouse, she was there, tied to a chair, gagged, beaten but conscious. He moved fast, checking corners. Then a voice echoed from the shadows. "You're predictable, Owen." Markovich stepped out of the dark, wearing the same white suit, unarmed. Behind him, 2 men with rifles stood guard, silent. "I knew you'd come," he said. Owen didn't respond. He looked at Natalie. She nodded once, just once, to say, "I'm still here." "You destroyed my network," Markovich continued. Set fire to years of work. For what? Justice? No, Owen said, walking forward. Peace. Markovich chuckled. You'll die here. Probably. Owen raised his pistol. Will you? The guards moved. He fired. One dropped. The other flanked. Natalie kicked her chair over to trip him. Owen dropped to a knee and shot the second in the thigh, then again in the throat. Silence. Markovich didn't move. Kill me, and they'll build another, he said. Owen walked closer. I'm not here to kill you, he said. Markovich frowned. What then? To end the bloodline. Owen swung. The pistol cracked against Markovich's jaw, then again and again, until the man collapsed to the floor, teeth shattered, eyes swollen, blood pouring. Owen knelt beside him. You wanted legacy? This is it. He pulled out a knife. They found Markovich's body the next day in the Bosphorus Strait. No ID, no prints. But they knew. The message was clear. This ends now. Owen vanished after that. Some say he went to Morocco, living under a new name, working in a bookstore. Others say he died in Brazil, shot by mercs loyal to one of Markovich's old clients. No one knows for sure. But every few years, someone, usually a powerful man with dirty hands, wakes up to find his money gone, his systems fried, and a note on his pillow that simply says, "Ghosts don't die." And Natalie? She lives quietly in Montenegro now, by the water. No tech, no noise. But sometimes, on stormy nights, she swears she hears a knock at the door. Just once, never twice. She never opens it. But she smiles. Because she knows Owen's still out there, watching, waiting. And if evil dares to rise again, he'll bury it, one ghost at a time.